The final part of our program today is a fireside chat with two prestigious education leaders from two very different education industries who probably need no introduction. Our very own Dan Schwartz has served as Dean of Stanford GSE since 2015 and is the faculty lead for the Stanford Accelerator for Learning. His vision and commitment to students, faculty, staff, and all learners has marked his tenure in both of these roles. We are also joined by the very accomplished Alberto Carvalho, Superintendent of Los Angeles Unified School District, the second largest school district in the country. His current position follows a 14-year tenure as Superintendent of Miami-Dade County Public Schools, where his accomplishments earned him numerous awards and recognition. Looking at both Dean Schwartz and Superintendent Carvalho, it is clear these two individuals possess the vision, commitment, and leadership to create lasting change. What many people may not know is that Dean Schwartz was both a student and later a teacher in the school district that Superintendent Carvalho now leads, LAUSD. Dan, thank you for your ability to lead us in envisioning the Stanford Accelerator for Learning and the GSE. Superintendent Carvalho, thank you for all that you do for LA's children and for your presence with us today. Would you please both come up to the stage? Thank you.
It's been thoughtful, interesting. My name's Dan Schwartz. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School of Education. Just so I don't forget, I want to take a moment to thank Isabel Howe for putting this all together. You know that, for those of you who know, the main thing I can think is Deborah Quazzo couldn't have pulled this off better than this. So one of the things I've loved seeing today is the interaction between scholars, practitioners, technologists. You've noticed the panels have been orchestrated, so we have representation from all sides. I think it's important these conversations happen early and often. The theory of change, whatever counts as a theory of change, for the accelerator is if we bring the science of learning, skills in design, and partnerships, who know what's needed out there and are able to scale things, that's how we're going to make big changes. But now it is my great pleasure to introduce Alberto Carvalho. He leads the second largest school district, as you heard. Here's some facts. LA Unified serves 550,000 students. You all have your companies. None of your employees are trying to run out of the classroom. Just imagine. This is kindergarten through 12th grade. The district has 1,000 schools. That's 1,000. The district also has 200 independently operated charter schools. There are tens of thousands of staff, from teachers to administrators. It has an $18.8 billion budget. So this is a huge enterprise that deals pretty much with everything life has to offer. So remember, education orchestrates 40 years of your life, when you're a child and then when you have children. It schedules your day. It goes up and down with your life. So a little background on our featured guest. Just so you know, the superintendent is probably the hardest job on earth. You are a politician, a businessman, an advocate, a manager, a superb strategist and listener, a pitch man, and you probably carry 2 cell phones or you have 2 aides with you wherever you go, right? Because $18.8 billion and 500,000 children running around like crazy is just hard to imagine. So Alberto joined Los Angeles Unified after 14 years leading Miami-Dade County Public Schools. While in Florida, he received a number of accolades, including National Superintendent of the Year, the Harold McGraw Prize in Education. Under his tenure, Miami-Dade became one of the nation's highest performing urban school districts. The district was named the 2014 College Board Advanced Placement Equity and Excellence District of the Year. It's that must have been quite a plaque to put all those words on it. and the 2012 winner of the Broad Prize for Urban Education. So since coming to LA, Carvalho is credited with bringing thousands of kids back into the classrooms after disappearing during COVID. So welcome. I really appreciate you coming here.
Thank you very much, Dan.
So I think the way I would like to do this is I will ask questions, but I would interleave questions from the audience rather than save them all for the end. And when you ask a question, it actually has to be a question. It can't be a statement where you're sort of going and trying to find a way to end your statement and think of a question. Okay, so I'm in the middle of a coincidence, and it's an impressive coincidence, and I have to capitalize on it. Last spring, I hosted a fireside chat, oddly just like this one, and I was interviewing the Minister of Education in Portugal. And so one thing he mentioned was that high school was not compulsory in Portugal until maybe 2012. So given that education was not a priority in that country, how did you end up becoming like one of the leading superintendents in the world?
Well, number one, thank you so much for the invitation to be with all of you. So many faces that are recognizable to me. That's actually an interesting question that's never been asked of me. It is true that compulsory education was not a reality in Portugal for many years, decades, actually up until recently. And it is also true that I probably should not have graduated high school. You know, I was one of 6 kids, the only one to graduate high school, actually. And the reasons are well known to all of us. You know, I checked all the boxes that many of the kids that today I educate, and I educated in Miami. Disproportionately poor minority, many dealing with one or more disabilities, children of parents who themselves don't have education, don't know how to navigate the intricacies of complex school systems that were not designed to actually address their needs. And as a result of all those elements, but I think the most important one, really poverty. My brothers and sisters didn't graduate. 2 of them died premature deaths because of lack of access to basic health care. And we sort of grew up in this one-room apartment, no running water, electricity. But Miss Natalia, she was my teacher from 1st to 4th grade. And she saw me, acknowledged me, and believed in me. And I think I owe her who I am today. She saw something, she saw somebody. And that taught me early on the power of acknowledging, the power of actually looking a kid in the eye and having the ability to touch their heart and then impact their mind. And that happened to me, and for years I remember that. So yeah, I finished high school, remarkably. Because my parents had neither power, possession, influence, you know, I had to work for like 8 months on ships, scrubbing deck, slicing potatoes, tomatoes, delivering towels, whatever it would take to earn enough money to become an illegal alien in this country by coming here on, you know, a round-trip ticket, knowing that I was not going to go back. So I became the best dishwasher in Manhattan. And then I became the best farm hand in Montana, and I worked in farms as the day laborer, construction sites. And then I went to Miami, and I didn't speak English at that time. I'm doing a little bit better today. And when I got to Miami, it felt like home because nobody spoke English there either. Actually, nobody speaks English there. So, and I felt right at home. And the second influential person was actually someone who probably would not succeed today, a Republican congressman. I was working in a restaurant as a busboy, and again, he acknowledged me. And he entertained a conversation with me, and he said, you know what, I'm going to check you out, which kind of scared me. If you're telling me the truth, I'm going to help you. And within 2 weeks, I had that golden piece of paper, a student visa with a right to work, 20 hours a week. I was working 60 hours a week, which was great, the American dream. I started paying taxes in the first 20. And then I learned how to really make it, and the rest is history. You know, then came college, graduate school, became a teacher, but not before I was homeless in Miami.
Wow.
Living under a bridge, literally, blocks away from the office where years later I became superintendent. So incredible story that I still can't remember. I have a 31-year-old daughter. When she hears me speak of it, she says, "Dad, that didn't happen." I said, "What, because you weren't there?" But it taught me early on then that if I made it, then 540,000 kids whose journeys, many of them whose journeys are not dissimilar from my own. And that's the incredible thing. We have 12,000 homeless kids in Miami. Poverty rates around 84%. Average literacy of the parents, very similar to my own parents, 3rd grade. And we need to create opportunities. And the opportunities begin with belief in them, and belief in ourselves to actually improve their current reality and circumstance.
Wow, it's amazing. So one thing that struck me in what you just said, so we've been at a conference here talking about technology, and a lot of the discussion is about access and getting things to the kids. But what you're describing about is that you don't want to be invisible as the learner, right? So someone saw you, and then suddenly you are able to contribute as opposed to just receiving the technology. Sure.
Absolutely. So I'm a huge believer in technology. In fact, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk about something we'll be launching in December in partnership with a number of private sector entities and philanthropy. That's really going to democratize and really make real for every single student in the Los Angeles Unified, the 540,000. They're all going to have a school of one because of the power of technology, because of all the data that we have for every single student, and data we have for parents. And that data is not just end-of-year data. It's updated every single day, like attendance data, critical incidents, behavioral data. But then, IEP data, couple that then with interim assessment, formative data. We are so data-rich and so utilization poor in districts across America. And just imagine that if, in addition to us meaningfully recognizing children, seeing children, acknowledging children, elevating their dignity and their humanity, then we use all the data that we have about them through the power of technology and generative artificial intelligence to create an ecosystem that is specific to that child, that personalizes the educational journey with the nudges, the reminders, with the scheduling, waking up the kid in 100 different languages, interacting with the student, learning from the student, but simultaneously interacting with the parent. So if Johnny is absent 2 days this week, it knows that Johnny was absent 17 days last year and recognizes the trend, automatically sends an email reminder to the attendance counselor at his school, scheduling a meeting with Johnny and the mom, bringing all the content providers to the table and forcing them to play in the same sandbox, which we're doing right now. Not easy, like herding cats, and say, you know what, yeah, you may be curriculum associates, you may be Houghton Mifflin McGraw, you may be whatever you are, Amplify. We don't care about your logos. We don't care about single sign-on to your platform. Create something where, in an agnostic way, when the student goes in our application, our AIP, IAP, Individualized Acceleration Plan, which we're calling ED, Eduardo Edwina for Education. When the student goes there, they sign on, they're greeted, they have a little icebreaker that appeals to them because the system has already learned what you like, and then meet you where you are and accelerate you in a fun way through gamification towards proficiency in literacy, numeracy, but it knows everything about you, and it updates itself and communicates with your teachers. And Alberto Carvalho, superintendent, I'm actually looking at all of this data of interaction, affording me an opportunity to format and fashion professional development specific to schools and make decisions regarding whole-scale district-wide procurement. But to your point, technology by itself, despite the great things it can do, without humans in a loop, at specific loops, will not work in education. It's never going to be a substitute. It is a great complement, and in my mind, a great environmental contributor to the ecosystem of learning for students. We will never be able to individualize and personalize the educational journey like we need to, particularly in large school systems like Los Angeles Unified or Miami-Dade. 350, 540. After the first 50,000, who cares? It's big. And that's the real power, but you need that level of sensitivity, humanity, of recognizing students for who they are, meeting them where they are, understanding their circumstance, and before you even try to impact their mind, really understand how to capture their attention by touching their heart. And that is very, very difficult to do through any technological application or tool.
Can I follow up on the data for a second?
Sure.
So Stanford needs to change its enterprise systems. And the way it's described to me sounds like Armageddon. Like I get warnings, pain is coming. How are you going to do the plumbing for what must be incredible amounts of heterogeneous data?
Yeah. So we don't, tell them I'm busy. So we don't start from zero, right?
Yeah.
We manage very powerful systems, legacy systems, and now cloud-based systems. You know, we've been operating big data systems for quite a while. We've learned through the best of research and practices, and we've learned also from the worst of experiences, like cyber attacks, where we had to very, very quickly bring in the best in the world to help us solve for that, to mitigate against the potential leak of massive amounts of data. We've also been one step ahead of, I think, of most institutions that I know of, and actually our IT systems in LA are far better than what I had in Miami. We've made sense over the past year and a half that I've been in LA, utilizing one-time federal money, ESSER money, which will sunset in 2024, massive amounts of investments into actually solidifying and improving our grid, improving our technologies, improving our systems. And we are now at a point of coherence, integrating all of the data, student data that we have in our student management system with all of the curriculum providers, whether it's core, we buy nothing that does not have, obviously, a virtual side, a core, acceleration, remediation, enrichment, social and emotional support, mental health. Everything needs to subscribe to our very specific protocols of data protection and data privacy. So I think we are in a fairly good place, allowing us to actually, just in a matter of about 7 months, build this application that we're going to launch in December. It's actually, we're at a beta test level right now, with a lot of adults using actual student data, interacting as kids, which is kind of fun, insulting the system all the time to try to probe the system, to try to get the craziest responses to the most inappropriate questions that kids, of course, would never ask, as you know. But to ensure that the system is resilient, that the system is knowledgeable, that the system can pivot very quickly, but being careful enough to build, as I said, the human in the loop that needs to be part of that artificial intelligence application.
So I can think of 14 Stanford researchers who want to work on your data when it's all, so maybe we talk later.
Yeah, it's getting some attention. It will be fun.
I bet.
It may get me fired, but it'll be fun. I've been trying to get fired for 17 years, so.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, then I'll open it up to the audience after this one. So I taught English language arts in Los Angeles Unified on an emergency credential. I got about 3 weeks of training, and then I was in a tough school. It was, the challenge was there was some confusion about what school I was supposed to be in. And so the day after school started, someone called me and told me I was going to John Muir Junior High, which is South Central Los Angeles, just south of USC. And so when I showed up, the only book that was available was a 1957 grammar textbook. All the other, I got beat to it. I'm old. I'm not that old. So here's an easy question, and then I'll save the hard one. There's the follow-up. Has technology changed access, instructional quality all these years? Like if I showed up now, would it be different?
It absolutely has, and actually one of the comments made by some of the previous panelists reflect that. Technology has changed the dynamic of teaching and learning in schools, but it happened at a cadence and frequency and speed that was rather slow. And inequities were pretty inherent to systems, depending on their buying power, or how aggressive the leader was, or how good the leader of curriculum and instruction or instructional technology was in that district. The pandemic, I mean, maybe that was the only silver lining, is that the pandemic did two things as far as education is concerned. Number one, it mobilized the private sector to be much more effective in its delivery, listening to districts, solving for a very visible problem, right? Kids are home, kids need to be educated. Federal funding, which was earmarked at a level never before seen, empowered districts, actually allowed districts to overcome the equity in funding conundrum, allowing districts to very, very quickly pivot to universal connectivity and one-to-one solutions. Empowered districts also and private sector entities to match standards, benchmarks with best-in-class virtual digital curriculum. And equally important, it almost forced everybody, because of the fact that parents no longer are in the back seat. They actually were looking at the same screen their kids were looking at, and they made judgment calls about what they saw. And superintendents and principals and everybody else were watching with horror some of the challenges at the earlier stages of the pandemic. And it mobilized the entire nation towards much more effective means of professionally developed teachers, educators, retooling and reskilling in a very, very short period of time. So I've seen that. I saw it in Miami. I saw it, the tail end of it here in Los Angeles. And I think we, as a nation, as far as technology is concerned, saw the skill set evolve very, very, very rapidly. So have things changed? Absolutely. You know, they've changed now in the way we select content, instructional materials, supplemental materials, core materials, enrichment materials. We don't buy anything that's really paper-based anymore. It needs to be able to be personalized, individualized, updatable on the dime, not waiting until the next, set of materials are printed. I think the changes have been dramatic. And I think, to a certain extent, I think this is a good thing. We have awakened a sleeping giant. The parent community is much more aware of what happens in schools. And we see that. And there are political factions in our country that are actually leveraging that newly discovered level of attention that parents have over schools, school boards, education, standards, books, in a very negative way, but there's also a very positive aspect. But things have changed.
Wow. Okay, so here, this may be a harder question, or it may even be easier for you. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm a kindergarten student. When I'm a high school student, what's my classroom going to look like?
Well, who knows? Who knows?
All those who know, raise your hand.
Yeah, things are moving so fast, they're changing so quickly that our ability to predict what the classroom of the future will be is really very limited. But in speaking with futurists and in understanding what parents today want and considering the leaps that technology has allowed in education, none of which, by the way, have been leveraged systemically, meaning across an entire district. You see it in very specific, isolated examples, classrooms, some schools, small conglomerate of schools, but not systemically, anywhere in America, regardless of size of district. But I think more than likely what we will see is a coming together of humanized artificial intelligence, creating environments that are detached, uncoupled from traditional funding that requires students to be in seat, in classroom, in school, much more flexible school days and school years, where time and space are in fact variables, they're not fixed assets, individualized, personalized education that from birth has been created for that student, that actually understands not only the academic needs of children, but recognizes their lived experience from birth, an inventory of data that does not begin at transitional kindergarten or kindergarten begins at birth, incorporating all elements in a very private, protected way that benefits the child, benefits the parents. I think that classroom will not be, it will be an environment, it will be an ecosystem, it will be a symbiosis between what's provided, what's acquired, the contributors, and the beneficiaries. But I think the biggest shift is going to be associated with where it takes place, how it takes place, the influencers and the factors that provide education. In fact, when I say provide education, I think I'm wrong speaking in the future, is that students will navigate an environment of experiences through which they will learn.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I like that. I also hope this comes to pass. So there's a retired professor in the School of Education, you know, my area is educational technology. He said to me, Dan, you know, it's never going to change the grammar of schooling. And I said, what do you mean? He says, the bell schedule. It'll never change. If you're right, I get the last word with this guy. So I hope you get it.
I think you will.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. We as adults, and the kids when we're not looking, we don't entertain ourselves, read, listen to music, watch movies, download information, access information with the rigidity with which we provide education in schools. In harsh environments with bad lighting, too cold, too hot, with seats that have no padding, with annoying as hell bells every 60 minutes, with food not when you're hungry, but food when you're prescribed to eat. And then you go to, you know, some remarkable private sector entities where there's actually a kitchen on every floor with snacks and apples and good stuff and drinks. So this idea that it can't is silly. In fact, the school that I created in Miami and I appointed myself as principal of, where I also taught, until the last day I served the superintendent in Miami, had no bells. Nobody needed permission to go anywhere. It was structured in a way where students navigated the actual space and navigated their own learning. And I think we proved something right there, that school is in the top 100 US News and World Report lists of schools. So yeah, we don't need those inflexible rules, regulations that play well as far as the adults are concerned, but really, in my opinion, damage kids. We put everybody through one-size-fits-all pipe of same length when we know as parents that if you have 2 or 3 kids, they're not going to walk, talk at the same time. They will mature cognitively in diverse ways, but the schooling experience we have for them does not recognize their diversity, their experiences, or the trials and trauma that they go through, or the exhilarating moments that we should leverage as far as they're concerned. And I think that's where we get it wrong.
You are an inspiring man. Thank you. Do we have, sure. Do we have a question from the audience? Of course, all the way in the back. You're going to have to shout.
I only heard every other word. So what are you going to do with?
What are the biggest risks of AI in the coming years? Associated with AI.
Well, number one, I'll be very honest, I don't think we know all of them. Just like the technology itself, it is, well, I was going to say it's so new. No, AI has been around for about 20 years. We just didn't know that we were using it, and quite frankly, we didn't know it was using us. It was playing us. Until ChatGPT just, all of a sudden, AI is a thing. AI has been a thing for a long time. I think the dangers, the things we should be looking out for, they're not necessarily dangers, are the obvious ones. Obviously, privacy, protecting privacy at all levels. Secondly, ensuring that truth, and I do think that politics is education, and education is politics, and education is democracy, and democracy is education, 2 sides of the same coin. Undermine one, the other will pay a price, and I think we've seen that. Educations are supposed to speak truth, and AI can be used to portray mistruths. So I think between the privacy issues, the potential for distortion are real. Everything else, quite frankly, I think can be managed. You know, I heard from one of the previous panelists that at the end of it all, you still need human intuition. You know, AI will learn you, will create paths to entice you, will research for you, will put the blocks together to create something, but at the end of the day, human intuition will still be required. And I think it is that human intuition that can solve for the potential problems. I think that ultimately, 10 years from now, we'll be facing the same challenges specific to AI that we face today. Can it be misused like any other tool, right? I mean, nuclear energy can cure cancer. It can also build a bomb. Is that not true with every single tool of innovation since the wheel or since the pencil, the most effective, powerful tool, right? You can write with it, you can stab someone with it. So it's no different. It's no different. I see it within the same four corners of possibility or problem.
So I have a slightly different take on that.
Okay.
My big fear of AI is that it's going to make us very efficient at very bad ways of teaching. That we're going to automate what we already know, and we're going to speed it up, and so there's the disinformation side and everything.
But remember, I don't disagree. But that's why I say the humans in the loop is indispensable. We can never, ever, ever be so reliant on a tool, a crutch, an additive supplement or complement that we forget who we are and how capable we are. So I agree with you. I think that's something we need to be careful with. So when I couch my statements regarding artificial intelligence with humans in the loop, those are compassionate, trained, insightful, creative, trained individuals who know how to teach, who know how to be a good learner, to be a good teacher, and know how to use the tool in a way that does not replace our innate ability and talent, rather enhances it. And again, you know, I wish I was around to have, I'm sure everybody here probably has a bucket list. I have a bucket list. My bucket list is not things or travel, nothing. It was attributes that I wanted to learn from a master teacher. So I wanted to meet Elie Wiesel to learn forgiveness. He didn't teach me forgiveness, he taught me something else. I wanted to meet Mandela. I was not able to. He died weeks away before I was to meet him. I've met a lot of very remarkable people that I wanted to learn something from. Just imagine now students being able to learn directly from the master. And AI can actually recreate those settings, where you can actually have a meaningful conversation with. And just imagine the teacher of that era, which is right now, being able to bring into her classroom, right, these master teachers. When you talk about civil rights movement in America, being able to have a conversation with Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, or have a chat, you know, sitting on the floor with Mahatma Gandhi, or being able to interview Caesar himself, Mandela. It's so powerful to be able to navigate the circulatory system as a cell. Because if you travel the journey, you're probably going to learn it, as opposed to reading it in a static book. That's the power that I envision.
I love the image of going through experiences. Yeah. So I do want you to talk about your IAP. This is the Individualized Acceleration Plan. It's a bit of a pun on IEP, which is the special ed plan that we create for students. Make it concrete for me. Like, I'm a teacher, and I get the student's IAP, and I scroll through it, and it says, how am I going to use this?
It's actually not designed for the teacher. It's designed for the end user is the student and the parent. The teachers will have access to individualized or collective information about students in their classroom, right? So they will be able to observe trends. They will be able to actually objectively determine the efficacy of their own teaching because of what students are producing, their level of interaction at all levels. But it is basically an application that resides on a smartphone, a tablet, a laptop computer, which the district provides to all students. And parents will be able to download it as well. Since we have all this information, we'll use all of the information that's available for every one of the 540,000 students. Attendance information, critical incident information, behavioral information, IEP information. By the way, we decided to IAP because people confuse it for IEP. And is it not true that every single kid in America should have an individualized education plan? It's not just for students with disabilities. Everyone should have an individualized education plan. So we want to make that a reality. So it uses all this repertoire of rich data that we have for students in an attempt, not an attempt, to realize an educational journey, leveraging all of the digital content we have at all levels, leveraging the information we have from the students and putting it in this pressure cooker where AI digests it all and produces an elegant, seamless pathway of learning with all of the incentives, the likes that the student recognizes, because they're going to go through an inventory where they will be asked questions. You open the application, an ad pops up, an ad starts speaking to you, asking you questions, and Ed is learning new. So he knows how to get your attention. Does the same thing with your parents, with your guardians. And then the magic happens. So not only will Ed bring in the best of the best of content, experiences that are gamified to the extent possible, in numeracy, literacy, science, social studies, etc., but it does it in a way that is agnostic to the provider, because one of our rules is no logos. You know, you cannot see who the provider is. When you go to the symphony, you sit, and there's a curtain, the musicians are in front. You're not looking at what's happening behind the curtain. You're not looking at the sound technicians. You're observing and absorbing beautiful music that makes sense. That's going to be IAP. It's going to appeal to all your senses. And it's going to bring solutions even when you don't know that you're being solved for. And it's going to involve all the stakeholders around that student, including the parents, with the same level of nudging, reminding, incentivizing, and rewarding that will engage the student, the parent, and the learning community. So
let me come back again. So I'm Johnny. I have my cell phone with chat GPT-14. It wakes me up and Caesar shows up on the cell phone. And Caesar says, Dan, your challenge today is to do this. And it's something like that?
Yeah. Actually, because IAP is going to look at Schoology, our LMS, it's looking at what's in store for the student for the day. Since all of our buses have GPS, IAP is going to tell Johnny's mom the time that the bus is going to pick him up. It's going to nudge him, hey, the bus is already here, almost here, and your phone has a GPS. You're not close to the bus. You got to hurry up. And by the way, don't worry about eating breakfast at home because we have whole wheat pancakes and turkey sausage at school for breakfast, and your lunch is going to be this. And by the way, in your first period class, the icebreaker is going to be this. Start thinking about that as you take a shower, brush your teeth. Why not?
I want one. I want one for my life.
We're going to give you one. And it's funny, you know what? We negotiated in a way as we're co-developers with private sector entities, where we retain control over the negotiation of what we will do beyond our school system. I think this will be a tool that many other systems will want, and we'll have an appropriate conversation at the appropriate price.
It's awesome. One more question.
I think that lady over there had her hand up in the white shirt.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you very much. I just have a question about how we ensure that the students don't fall into the cracks where, like, when COVID happened, all of a sudden people didn't have laptops, but they didn't have internet. Or like when you were going to go and say, oh, now we have everyone moving to home, they didn't actually have a place to eat because they were relying on computers so much. So I'm just curious about, like, how do we ensure that when we're accelerating this technology, with technology that typically is designed for a particular type of people because it's designed by a particular type of
Yeah, good question. I think, yeah, so how do we ensure, much like during the pandemic, some kids fell through the cracks, that as we are bringing these new innovative tools, we're not creating a replica of conditions that would allow students to fall through the cracks, right? I think it's a fair question. And by the way, as a country, I think we've been pretty lousy, right, at delivering what's access to high-quality educational programs, access via transportation to cultural and artistic exposure to students, high-dosage tutoring before, after-school enrichment opportunities. I mean, it can go down the list. You know, what I know is that anytime those kids fall into those early gaps, they become achievement gaps, which, if not mitigated, they become lifelong economic gaps that adults struggle through. My parents, my brothers and sisters lived that, so I understand it. So when I spoke about us having solved for many of the elements that led to the creation of IAP, I think we were very careful in addressing those. Secondly, there's universality to our approach, meaning everybody is going to get this. And this is a tool of equity. It's not going to treat, by definition, right, through its personalization and individualization, because it knows the child, knows the student, knows the profile, because of all the data that we have. It's going to provide that equity boost that each student needs on the basis of where they are, specific to their socioeconomic level, their English language limitation, their very specific disability, the educational level of the parents. And this is going to bring not only answers, nudges, reminders, avenues for learning, but also powerful connections beyond the schoolhouse, community-based organizations for the parents, after-school programs for the students. We're now at the second layer, speaking with the mayor and speaking with community-based organizations to embed as part of the data that we use all of those additional support systems and opportunities beyond the schoolhouse. So just picture that now, that IAP is not just an educational tool, but it is a fully integrated builder of opportunity for students, so specific to the child based on that child's information, but so specific also to where that child lives, proximity to cultural centers, tutoring programs, et cetera. It's about making connections that are age appropriate, they are fun, enticing, but they all have purpose behind them. I think what we've done, we've created the safety nets to ensure that what has been lived by many students, including myself when I was a young man, shall not be lived by the kids as a result of access to this application.
So Superintendent Carvalho, it has been a great honor to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fabulous.
Thank you.
So thank you, Dean Schwartz, and thank you, Superintendent Carvalho, for the insightful remarks on belief, on visibility, on hope, on humans in the loop, on opportunities. And really grateful for the two of you for being such long-standing leaders who have positively impacted so many lives of students and educators. Thank you. So before we enjoy connecting with each other at cocktail in a few minutes, I wanted to share a few words of gratitude. So first, thank you to the extraordinary, mighty team that pulled this event together. In particular, there is one person who has truly shined. Her grace and her attention to details have made this event very special, I think. And may I add something? It's actually the first time that she's organizing an event. And so imagine what may be coming next after this experience. Thank you to my remarkable colleague, Claire Brown. Thank you also to our MC extraordinaire, Nerida Salinas, for deep care and humanity. Thank you to my colleague Angela Chen, who recently joined our team and has stepped up with really remarkable elegance. Thank you to Holly Matterman, Isabel Sachs, and Brooke Donald in our communication team. Thank you. Thank you also to several special partners on this event. Ben Cornell at EdTech Insiders. Thank you, Ben. Joy Shen, our entrepreneur in residence. And David Perrin, Yuhiko Ishigami, and Sarah Flam, who are co-presidents of the Stanford Ed Club and have been partners since day one on visioning this event. Thank you also to our two students who opened the conference with such remarkable comments, Sarah Flam and Chris Ma. In my mind, you are our future, so thank you. Thank you also to the 11 generous sponsors and dinner hosts for the event, who all represent very impactful organizations and are all led by incredible thought leaders in education, and many of them are personal friends. So Age of Learning, Amira Learning, Clever, Cooley, Good Notes, GSV Ventures, McGraw-Hill, Merlin Mind, Microsoft Education, Owl Ventures, and Rich Capital. Thank you to all those organizations. Last but not least, thank you to all of you for joining and for engaging with us and with each other to collaboratively shape a future of learning that is not only effective but also equitable, diverse, and responsive to the needs of all learners. Clearly, AI is opening new possibilities and also raising foundational questions for all of us. As a French native person and sitting and working here on this campus, I have this image of an analogy that we are at the dawn of a renaissance. What I call the AI Renaissance. And the Renaissance, in the 15th and 16th century was a major period of human ingenuity that had at least 4 major impacts on education and learning. The first one is that it instilled a new spirit of inquiry, creativity, and questioning on how the world works. And it led to major rethinking on inequities. Similarly, today, we are seeing major questions about what do we learn? And we heard a lot about those questions. What do we teach? How do we learn? How do we teach? The Renaissance was also associated with the printing revolution that permitted knowledge to be disseminated widely and easily. And similarly, today, we are experiencing this massive diffusion of knowledge globally. Third point is many public education systems and universities were started during the Renaissance. And similarly, today, it feels like we are at the dawn of new systems of education that are emerging in front of us. And lastly, the Renaissance advanced the science of pedagogy itself, with a rising recognition of critical thinking, for example, or trade schools that were invented with apprenticeship programs. Similarly, today, there is an opportunity to accelerate the science of learning and bring it to scale. Ultimately, this is what we want to do at the Stanford Accelerator for Learning. We want to unlock the full potential of each and every human being through learning. And of course, we can't do it alone. So to paraphrase John Lewis, here is to making good and necessary trouble together so that each and every person learns and thrives in a dynamic future. Thank you, and enjoy cocktail and dinner for those staying with us.